Okay. Let everybody trickle in. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll kick it off in a few minutes, just letting everybody join in, get settled. While we're waiting, per usual on our best practice sessions, and this is our last summer series best practice session. So thanks again for everybody for joining. If you want to send in the chat where you're located, we love knowing who's joining from where. And I am joining from Denver, Colorado. I know a lot of people have probably heard me speak on these. I'm still in Denver, Colorado, and Nadine is joining me today, and I'll let her share where she's from.
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn, New York, in my apartment.
We have Vancouver,
Yeah, Syracuse.
upstate New York, California. Okay, Ontario. Okay, and I always call Albany upstate New York, but some people scold me for that. I
I think of it as upstate New York too.
consider anything past the end of Metro North is any train line from the city that you can't go any farther is upstate New York. Okay, Lauren confirmed. Okay, yeah, continue to send it. We'll probably hop in now that we're a couple minutes in and we have a decent amount of people signed in. And as a reminder, these are recorded sessions. We always save them on our Help Center. As part of the follow-up email, we will also link where to find the best practice sessions. So even outside of this one, you can look at all of our past sessions as well. So to get us started, I'll kind of kick it off with just some introductions. So welcome to today's best practice session. For anybody just joining, we're just sending in the chat where you're tuning in from. So continue to do that. We love to hear from you guys. And this session is our last summer series, and it is on Fitwel social performance, or as we'll refer to it in the rest of the session, FSP for short. So for those who haven't joined a prior session or that I haven't had the pleasure of working with before, I'm Whitney Nielsen, Director of Client Engagement here at Fitwel. I lead our champion programs, relationship management team, and our customer success team. So I am joined today by my colleague Nadine, our Head of Partnerships and Innovation, to cover as much as we can to introduce you to our scale solution here at Fitwel, FSP. So Nadine, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Whitney, and welcome everyone. So as Whitney mentioned, excuse me, my name is Nadine Rachid. I'm head of partnerships and product innovation. I'm really excited to dive into FSP today and talk about this tool that is designed to allow you to certify all of your assets in a cost-effective and scalable way. And really, it aims to solve some of the challenges that we've been hearing from our clients and from you around scaling certifications, reporting needs, and portfolio benchmarking.
Thanks so much. We're so happy to have you here today. You bring a wealth of knowledge. So our goal today is really to make sure that all of you joining and anybody listening to this recording later walk away knowing what FSP is, how it works, and how to plan for it in your budgets for both this year and for next year, if you're looking for a solution to end out this year. So let's, without further ado, jump right in. So as I mentioned, we'll start off with what is FSP? Let's just kind of like lay the groundwork. So Nadine, I'll hand it over to you. Let's start from the very top. What is FSP?
Yeah, so in short, FSP is our scale certification pathway. It focuses on portfolio performance, peer benchmarking, and incremental improvement. So, unlike our STAR certification, which is geared towards asset by asset application and captures about like 5 to 10% of the highest performing assets within a portfolio, FSP is designed to be used across portfolios. So it's designed as a solution that captures 100% of your assets, gives you a snapshot of where they stand against their peers and against each other, and a roadmap of what to do next. And really, what makes FSP accessible and scalable is that it is a shorter scorecard that is based still on the Fitwel V3 strategies, but it's a subset of these strategies that are both health promoting and financially material.
Amazing. So it's not about getting every detail perfect at each building and achieving the most strategies and points, theoretically. It's about capturing consistent data across an entire portfolio and turning it into these actionable insights. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's a focused approach, and it's about knowing the performance of the assets, where the portfolio stands, and how to improve over time. And really, this is what makes it like such a strong fit for investors, asset managers, and owners who are looking for an entity-wide benchmarking, investor reporting, or simply just gaining insights into their portfolios.
Amazing. This is a great foundation. We're kind of touching the surface today on exactly what FSP is. So hopefully that gave everybody a general understanding. And now we'll kind of like start diving into some specifics and talk about the types of assets and portfolios that can use FSP and why. And as a quick note, I know sometimes we have a deck and sometimes we just go live on different resources. I'm sharing some of our resources that you can find on our website here. We'll be sharing links to how to download them yourself, but I'll be flashing back and forth between some one-pagers we have as well as the platform, just to orient everybody. So to hop back in, to dive into FSP, Nadine, I'll hand it back over to you. What types of users and portfolios are you seeing gravitate towards FSP and have success with its use?
Yeah, it's really broad, Whitney. Like we are seeing portfolios that are a mix of multifamily, industrial, senior housing, office buildings, even campuses and sites. The common thread is that companies that are using FSP, they're coming to FSP when they want a larger portfolio coverage instead of cherry picking assets for star certification. We're seeing that people are using FSP for reporting or GRESB, aligning with other ESG goals like SFDR, SDGs, or just wanting a clearer picture of risk and opportunity across their assets. We're also seeing portfolios that are using FSP because their assets are health promoting. They are implementing interventions that promote health, but the assets can't necessarily reach a star rating at that specific point. So, what they do is they use FSP to gain that market differentiation in specific areas, highlight what they're doing really well, and make decisions on what they want to do next.
That's amazing and such a great opportunity, and where we're trying to, fill a need in the market here. So going back to you mentioning that FSP certification is that subset of V3 strategies. I want to talk more about strategies and achievement, but first I want to kind of back up a little bit and discuss how FSP is organized to really orient us to the product before diving in any further. And in comparison to Fitwel Star certification. So I'll just kind of, if you're familiar with Star certification, this will help kind of orient you even further. So I'll pull up a visual to show the relationship between targeted outcomes, metrics, and the V3 strategies. So this is from our Fitwel Starter Kit, which we'll share a link to in the chat probably a few times in this webinar. But on our website in the resource library, you can find, we have a couple bundles available, and one of them is the FSP Starter Kit. And this is the strategy list that's available as part of that starter kit. So to dive into the organization of FSP, it is organized into 6 sections. So similar to our STAR certification that is organized into 12 sections, we have these 6 as part of FSP. And I'll scroll down here a little bit so you can see the 6 here. So targeted outcome is listed here. And when you scroll up, I passed it. The 6 are listed right here. So these are, we call them the targeted outcomes in the FSP product. And those are the 6 sections that you would see on your digital scorecard. So these targeted outcomes are core themes that connect goals around health promotion and economic value creation. And to just give a quick overview of the 6 targeted outcomes, outcome 1 is support high quality environment. Outcome 2 is create resilience. Outcome 3 is engaging with occupants and community stakeholders. 4 is promote equity. 5 is optimize asset for walking and active transportation. And 6 is enhance access to biophilia. So these 6 targeted outcomes are broken down further into metrics that help define and measure the impact using the strategies that go into each. So I'll scroll down here. You can see we define different terms here, so you can dive into that as well. This is a great resource. But here, just for visual sake, I did see someone asked about commercial interior. You can see here what scorecards and really typologies apply here. So you can see what strategies apply to the different typologies. Commercial interior can definitely use FSP to short answer, but that would fall under workplace. So you can see which strategies apply to workplace assets. To jump back to metrics, you can see here, this is how the organizational structure works. So within each targeted outcome, you have the metrics that measure impact within each targeted outcome. And then as Nadine mentioned earlier, targeted outcomes and FSP more broadly is a subset of V3 strategies. So you're not learning new strategies as part of pursuing FSP. We actually utilize the same subset and just it's a smaller subset of strategies, which you can see here. So a lower lift. So the strategies differ between each scorecard, which you can see in the table shown here. And now that we've oriented you and discussed the strategy organization of FSP, we'll go back to achievement and strategies around pursuing FSP certification. So Nadine, you mentioned GRES reporting as a motivator for pursuing FSP certification and who it could be a good fit for. So can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure this is something that a lot of you are interested in. So FSP is recognized for GRESB for partial plus points. The requirement for achieving GRESB points is simply to report on two of the targeted outcomes that Whitney just laid out for us and that you can see on the screen. And so as we've discussed so far, FSP is applicable to a wide variety of assets, and you can submit different asset types within the same portfolio. The strategies are organized in the way to make the submission more efficient. So you can see the strategies organized also between assets and entities. So you can submit across the entity strategies that are applicable across multiple assets. At the end of the process, once you complete the certification, you get access to actionable findings and performance data. This all makes FSP a great certification pathway for entities submitting to GRESB and to boost your GRESB scores. And additionally, I think the insights that are the outcome of FSP really provide much more additional value. And we will get into all of that later in this webinar as we discuss the outputs of this pathway.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot that comes out of this, and we're really excited about the data and the actionable insights that you can gain from pursuing this product. So you just mentioned opportunities outside of specifically reporting that somebody might be doing to something like GRES as an entity. So using the findings from pursuing FSP, what's an example of what you mean by using these outside of just GRES reporting?
Yeah, great question. What I'm referring to here is that FSP isn't a pass-fail certification. It's a benchmarking opportunity and a process. So, for example, answering no to strategies when a specific asset or assets within a larger portfolio cannot meet the requirements still has value. It highlights a gap and it highlights opportunities. So it helps you understand which assets are outperforming others within the portfolio and in which areas and which are lagging behind. So for example, when a gap is identified, let's say in an emergency preparedness policies, let's say some assets aren't meeting the emergency preparedness policies, that becomes a roadmap for improvement for these specific assets, not a penalty. And on the other hand, the assets that are outperforming and outperforming in specific areas, they present market differentiation opportunities and tenant engagement opportunities as well. So it can be used in both ways.
Yes. And speaking of the outcome, I just put up our mock report. That's part of the outcome for this product. And what Nadine just mentioned is, you can identify something like emergency preparedness. If you can see here, you're underperforming, you didn't really submit anything within those strategies, it helps you identify that there is an area of opportunity there. And we break things down even further and can make them actionable versus, using our strategy language and the requirements and compliance documentation there to give you a pathway. Just wanted to put this up here so you can see what the report card looks like. So that's great and definitely something that we're all really excited about as part of this product. I think there's so much potential for real estate portfolios to both celebrate what they're already doing, the changes they're willing to make, and also identify those opportunities for future development. So we've covered at a high level what FSP is, who can benefit from it, and what some of the outcomes are. We've touched on those a little bit. So the next question that I think everyone's probably curious about and always ask is, what does it cost?
Very important question, of course. So the first point I want to make here is that unlike STAR certification, FSP is an annual certification, and we do require recertification every year within the calendar year to maintain the certification. As for the fees, FSP does not require registration fee. Instead, the fee is a flat rate of $1,000 per building and $1,500 per site. The submission is third-party validated. It follows the same review process as our STAR certification. It comes with certificates of achievement per asset, which can be used towards GRESB, and also it earns you, as I said, the partial plus point for GRESB for those that are submitting a minimum of two of the targeted outcomes. So that is the GRESB requirement. We do have another pathway for pursuing FSP. This is more of a self-generated benchmarking. This pathway is $750 per asset, whether it's a building or site. There's no differentiation here. Think of this as more of an internal tool. It does not go through third-party validation, so you really don't need to document for this pathway. It is a tool for you to understand your assets, and to make decisions and gain perspective into how the assets or a portfolio is performing for your internal use. And because it doesn't go through third-party validation, it does not qualify for GRESB. And there is no documentation, so we're not really validating your performance, but you do have access to the digital platform and you can do your assessment on the digital platform.
Amazing. And I always recommend, and I think this is consistent across all best practice sessions, our platform is a wealth of knowledge, and it is a one-stop shop for resources, for tracking your progress, for looking at areas of opportunity, doing a gap analysis. It's really great. You don't have to reference a bunch of different resources or Excels or work offline. Your entire team can take part, and it's updates live as you get things on the platform. So just want to plug that per usual. I think it's a great tool for certification in general, FSP or STAR. So just to kind of recap there and summarize, if GRESB is the goal for you as a company, as a user, it sounds like certified benchmarking is the way to go. As Nadine mentioned, 2 targeted outcomes would be the minimum to pursue there. And as we took a look at earlier, these are the 6 targeted outcomes. So depending on what your goals are as a company, some of these might align better to your goals than others. And we also recommend always incremental change over time, pursue things that you might not be able to achieve at all assets. Because as Nadine plugged earlier, the emergency preparedness plan, it's a great opportunity to look at things that you might not be achieving now, but could in the future, and can implement them over time, since this is an annual certification. Otherwise, the self-generated be a lower cost first and give valuable insights at the same time, which is great. And it does function as like a gap analysis, like Nadine mentioned. So you do not have to upload documentation. It really helps just give you a snapshot in time across your entire portfolio. So I want to point out here that another outcome from pursuing FSP that is coming soon are decals for your assets that achieve certification. So to kind of back up real quick, you do get certificates for achieving FSP per asset as soon as you go through that certification process. That is specific to that certified benchmarking opportunity because it does go through that third-party validation. Coming soon, you will get a decal, and then you also get this report that we brought up earlier that can be found in the starter kit as well. This is a mock report of what you would receive as an outcome. So these decals would be for certified portfolios to showcase your achievement per asset. We will share more information via our communication channels. So Kenny will share in the chat just a link to how to sign up for our newsletter so you can stay up to date on that and know when those are available. So now let's walk through how you actually get started. This is a newer product, so we want to make sure that you know how to hit the ground running if you're interested.
Yeah, so since FSP is still a new product, and in true Fitwel fashion, we really enjoy taking the opportunity to work one-on-one with our clients and with the clients who are pursuing it. This allows us to get to know our clients a lot better and also gain valuable insight into their experience. So at the moment, FSP is not a self-service pathway that you will find on the platform. Instead, our team will be working with you directly to set up your portfolios on your accounts. So if you're interested in using FSP, and I really hope that you are after the end of this webinar, you can reach out to us by filling out a form on our website, which I think Kenny or someone will share it in the chat as well. And our team will be in touch to get you started and answer any of the questions that you have. And thank you, Whitney, for pulling it up as well. And for those of you who are champions, you can reach out to your relationship managers and they can help support you in that as well. All right, so as for the process of getting onboarded, it's really quite simple. And really, as you're working with our team, they help you through all of it. As a start, we will need to know the number of portfolios or entities that you wish to pursue FSP with. So we do have some clients that are using FSP on multiple portfolios. So you don't necessarily have to do one portfolio. You can decide to do it on multiple. We just need to know how many. We need to know the number of assets within each of these portfolios and the targeted outcomes that you have identified for each portfolio. So you don't have to pursue all the targeted outcomes. You decide which ones, and let us know. Our team will also ask you for each asset's address and asset type and the occupancy status. The last two are really for us to get you on the correct scorecard. All of this will be shared through templates, so it's quite simple. We will send you a template with all the fields and you just fill it out and send it back to us. And once we have all of that information, then we will load up your assets on the Fitwel platform. At that point, your project team will have access to the digital scorecards. And thank you, Whitney, for pulling that up. And you can respond to each applicable strategy and then provide documentation and submit your projects. One important note I do want to add here is that since FSP is a scale certification, we do require a minimum of 10 assets or 100% of a portfolio. The 100% of a portfolio is for these funds and portfolios that have less than 10 assets, but want to certify the entire portfolio. Having said that, if you want to use FSP but cannot meet the 10 asset minimum requirement, I still do encourage you to reach out to us and we will discuss how we can best support you to meet your goals.
Definitely. Yeah, please reach out. We just love having conversations with anybody who's interested in learning more as well, so that we can learn from you guys. So the process for getting started, as Nadine mentioned, is pretty straightforward. And just to reiterate and summarize for anyone looking to get started and pursue FSP, either now or in the future, once you submit and go through the certification process, which as a note and can be found on, we actually have a resource as part of that starter kit as well. That's, the differences between FSP and STAR certification. The similarity here is that the certification timeline is the same. So it's dependent on the type of user that you are. If you're a general user, it would be the 16-week timeline. If you're an ambassador or champion user, it would follow the 12-week timeline. And then after that point, when you are done with the certification process, very similar to STAR certification, you will receive your certificates per asset, which is what you would submit as documentation for any reporting bodies. And then to kind of pivot and talk about another deliverable, the mock report I flashed earlier, and the real gem here, the annual peer benchmark report, which we will cover next. So let's talk about the deliverable for FSP because it's one of the biggest value adds for achieving certification.
Yeah, so remember earlier when we talked about FSP being a benchmarking opportunity and a process, the annual report is really where it all comes together and FSP shines. Every portfolio that gets certified with FSP will receive an annual report, which thank you again for pulling it up. And we saw kind of a snapshot of it earlier. The report includes a report card of your portfolio, and which highlights the performance in the pursued targeted outcomes. So at the top of the report, you can see the targeted outcomes that create resilience and the optimizing assets for walkability. For example, this is what this mock report is showing. It will also show peer benchmark data against Fitwel's global data set. These are the cells that are highlighted in this kind of pink color. the global that when we say peer data set, we're talking about comparing asset types to asset types. So you're always comparing different asset types to the same to the data set of the same asset type. We also, the report also includes the detailed performance by the Fitwel strategies. So under each targeted outcome, you can see the different strategies, and you can see the performance of each asset against these strategies. And finally, the roll up of a portfolio-wide performance against peers and the entire performance of the entire asset. For example, at the end, you can see that, or at the bottom as well, exactly. So you can see your performance overall against the peers and the details of all of that.
Yep. And as Nadine mentioned, which I think is a common question we get, this 42%, let's say this portfolio is a multifamily residential portfolio. This 59% metric comparing you to your peers would just be that subset of multifamily residential projects. So we really want to make sure that it's apples to apples and you really are being compared to your peer group.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yep. So to really speak to this, and kind of some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat too, which we'll dive into later if we have time. If we don't, I meant to mention this at the beginning. We've captured all of your questions, so thank you for sending them and continue to send them. I know this is a brand new product and you guys have a lot of questions. We'll follow up and we'll send them as part of our follow-up email. So they will be captured there for everyone to see the response to as well. So to really recap here and these deliverables, FSP isn't just a certificate. It's not just a certification, checking a box. It's a roadmap. You'll see where you're leading, where there are gaps, where small improvements can be made and can deliver outsized impact. So kind of just touching on a question that I saw earlier, you can pursue FSP as a way to get a snapshot of your portfolio and then use it as a roadmap to continue on to certification, which we'll touch on in the next section as well. As a way to get the most value from pursuing Fitwel across different products. So there's a lot of different ways to use FSP.
Yeah, and as we mentioned previously, it is designed for reporting. So you can drop it right into GRAS, ESG reports, investor decks. You can share it internally within your teams or use it for, marketing efforts and market differentiation.
Definitely. So speaking of reporting, let's talk about deadlines and validity. A lot of people are always curious and want to make sure they don't miss these deadlines. And it's very well timed because we are in the middle of submission deadlines right now for STAR certifications. So for deadlines pertaining to FSP, as we mentioned earlier, FSP runs on an annual cycle. So submissions are due December 31st, so very end of the year, an easy date to remember, to be included in that global peer benchmark, which we spoke about earlier. We want to make sure we have maximum users and peers in that group to compare you with. So then it's also consistent data that you're receiving. So as a reminder, the certification process does follow our traditional review process. So be sure to allot the full 12 to 16 weeks of review into any timelines or goals that you're working towards in the following year. And then on validity, certification is valid for 1 year. So you'll want to recertify annually to maintain certification and recognition. And also, it's an opportunity to pursue additional targeted outcomes, additional strategies, document things on certain assets that might not have been achieving a strategy or a metric or a targeted outcome and have the opportunity to really see that change over time in the report. The recertification process, to touch on that a little bit, is very similar to our STAR certification and is hosted on the platform. So you can refer back to your original submission as well. Everything will be captured there. And to quickly touch on pricing here around recertification, it is discounted at 20% off the current fees per asset. So now let's connect the dots between FSP and STAR certification a little bit more because a lot of folks wonder how they work together, as we've seen in some of the questions in the Q&A already.
Yeah, and we'll dig into the questions in the Q&A to answer these specific questions. But think of it this way, FSP is scale and STAR is depth. So FSP covers all your the entire portfolio with consistent benchmarking. STAR certification lets you highlight individual assets with the 1 to 2, 3 star rating plaques and the 3-year certification. FSP's annual. STAR rating is a 3-year certification timeline. You can also use FSP to identify high performing assets for star rating certification after certifying a portfolio. So you can decide to go to implement FSP across your portfolio and use that as a way to identify the best qualifying assets to go through the full, to go into the depth, right? Like to go through the full star certification. And they do work together. So they are the same strategies. So if you've achieved a strategy on FSP and you want to continue that specific asset towards star certification, that strategy carries over and will be already validated towards your star certification.
And as a note there, just to get into a little bit of specifics real quick, and as an important reminder, they are V3 strategies on
Mhm.
FSP. So if it's you can utilize, we've seen a lot of people pursue a portfolio of assets where half of them may have full certification with Fitwel Star certification already, and they want to get their whole portfolio certified under FSP. That's perfectly fine. If
Yeah.
you pursued, VRA, VRM in the past, when you look at a project overview on the digital scorecard, you'll see a section specifically for FSP. So it'll capture both. And I'll actually show you a visual here. So this asset, for example, has a full STAR certification for multifamily residential, and then they also have FSP certification. So you can, use both. They are complementary. I do just want to note that they are a subset. FSP is a subset of B3 strategies. So to kind of just elaborate on that a little bit and recap, the two are complementary. So you can use FSP to identify which assets are strongest and then take those through STAR certification to showcase them, which is really what the STAR certification is. We want you to be able to celebrate these achievements and these assets that are doing a lot in terms of health impact on their occupants. So some great insights on the difference between STAR and scale certification and the impact of pursuing both can also be found in our last webinar that we hosted with our partner and Fitwel champion provider, Evora, which we'll share a link to in the chat. It was one of our Fitwel intro sessions. So we'll share that and that we get into that scale and depth conversation in more depth on that webinar. So now let's hit a few Q&As that we received prior to this session before we open up to the live Q&As and answer as many as we can. As I always preface these sessions, we try to stick to around 40 to 45 minutes and provide the last 15 minutes as buffer. So hopefully we can get to everything today. So I encourage everyone to continue to send questions and we'll answer as many as we can or follow up in the email. So Nadine, to kick us off, does FSP have prerequisites?
No. Similar to our STAR certifications, there are no prerequisites. You can start immediately. It is a true choose your own adventure. The only minimum requirement to keep in mind is the 2 targeted outcome minimum for submitting FSP for GRESB.
Definitely very important to note if you're looking to submit to GRESB.
Mhm.
The next question we received is, do all assets need to score well or be high performing?
Again, no, not necessarily, right? FSP, we talked about it, it's a process, and the certification alone highlights both the strengths and the gaps that are in the portfolio. And there's value in pursuing FSP across your entire portfolio to gain that insight and to improve next year.
Definitely. A question we get around submission and the deadlines associated, which we mentioned is end of year, December 31st. Can someone submit assets throughout the year?
Yeah, and we want you to do that because we want you to include all of the assets and we want you to work as much as you can. So you can submit mid-year, but to include the assets in the annual report and for the GRESB reporting, you need to submit by December 31st. That's the only thing. So you can add assets throughout the year, but just make sure that you're submitting by the end of the year to get that annual report. If you miss that deadline, also these assets will be counted towards the following year and won't be included in the annual report because they haven't been submitted. Yeah.
Definitely. No, that's an important piece and why we work one-on-one with a lot of people pursuing FSP. We want to make sure that whatever your goals are, whatever timeline you're working towards, we can make sure you have the right submission deadline that works for what you're trying to do. It might be December 31st of the current year. It might be the following year, depending on what you're looking to achieve as an outcome and your reporting needs. So last question we have before we jump into the live Q&A is, when do I see results? Is a question that we get.
Yeah, so as you previously mentioned, Whitney, FSP certifications align with our STAR certification timeline when it comes to the reviews. So the way the process works is once you complete your documentation for all the assets that are within the portfolio, and that those are submitted, we will start the review process. And the initial review is within 6 to 8 weeks of submission of all the assets within the FSP portfolio, so that really the review kicks off the minute all of the assets are submitted, and then it follows the same timeline of the review process. So you do see results once that review process is completed, and the final annual report is usually issued in Q2 of each year.
Amazing. And that's kind of based off of, as anybody who's pursued Fitwel Star certification in the past, it's a 12-week at a minimum review timeline. So it would fall into Q2 of that following year if you submit by December 31st. So it really just follows the submission timeline. You'd get your certificates by around end of March, and then you can use those for your submissions. And then the annual report is really so that you can have those valuable insights and action those insights, which is exciting. I did want to also and this is a general best practice on the platform and something we've implemented this year, the certification timeline, as Nadine mentioned, because it does follow the initial review, the 6 to 8 weeks, you can find the timeline per asset on the overview portion of the digital scorecard. And this is consistent across STAR or FSP certifications.
And can I add one more thing as we are on the screen? Also, dashboard, you can see how your portfolio is performing against the economic impact that are associated with the strategies. And at the bottom, still the health impact categories that you are probably familiar with. So the only addition here is the economic impact, and that you can see for both FSP and the STAR rating as well.
Yes, and just to orient anybody that might not have used our platform or certifications before, that was like, and I feel like we've said the word roll up a few times now, but this is like the roll up of all strategies you've pursued and the data associated with economic impact and health impact for this project. And then within each targeted outcome, you can see the impact per strategy. So with, exterior acoustic comfort, you can see which health impact categories you're impacting, and then which economic impact categories. So it's really nice to get that perspective at the strategy level, the project level, the portfolio level. And those insights are then also issued in the report in a very digestible way so that you have those insights without having to, decode them yourself on the platform.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have a few questions that we can cover in the chat. I will just kind of reiterate some of them. I know we gave a nod to them as we saw them come in, but just to recap, make sure everybody has their questions answered. Does this include commercial interiors? The answer there, hopefully we answered it through the webinar, but yes, it is applicable, I would say, to almost all asset types, but we specifically have the workplace scorecards available on FSP. So commercial interiors is definitely an asset type that you can pursue with FSP. Taking a look here, does each asset have to submit documentation, or can policies that are applicable to all assets be only submitted once? I'll let you speak to that one, Nadine, and the entity approach.
Yeah, so we talked earlier when we were looking at the strategies, how we identify which strategies are asset specific and which ones are entity specific. So for the entity strategies, you don't have to document them for every single asset. Like I said, you're working directly with our team. So our team will help you Once we review it once, it's implemented across the entire portfolio. So you don't have to really document it for every single asset. This is something that we help you with, but also it is a coming soon feature on our platform that you will be able to use as well for in terms of that efficiency.
Amazing. And here it breaks down exactly how many strategies across the different asset types have this entity level strategy, and then the other ones that would be asset level. And as we mentioned earlier, you pick and choose the targeted outcomes you pursue. And as you review this resource in more depth, or if you have any questions, reach out to us, let us know. But as you go through, you can see which targeted outcomes. Some have a lot of entity wide strategies. So it's really nice if you're gathering this data at an entity level for your entire portfolio. I recommend taking a look at the targeted outcomes and seeing which ones you can submit at an entity level. Like you can see here under targeted outcome, create resilience, a lot of people have this, or a lot of portfolios have this information in terms of, flood prone zones and fire prone zones and emergency preparedness, and you can submit those at the entity level. Yes. Jumping into the next question, can FSP apply to assets that already have STAR certification? For example, instead of recertifying the STAR certification. So this is where we were talking about there's multiple pathways because we've introduced FSP. So if it's a high performing asset and you want to maintain STAR certification, and something we didn't touch on, but is in this resource here, the STAR and FSP certification, which is in the starter kit, the GRES point value for STAR certification is a full point, whereas FSP is partial plus. So if that's something that's of interest in maintaining your STAR certification, I recommend continuing to do that. There are a lot of valuable insights and value for pursuing STAR certification. But those assets can also be included in your FSP submission so that you can gain insight to how it stacks up against your greater portfolio. And then if you haven't pursued FSP or STAR certification, there's value in pursuing FSP first and then using it as a roadmap and an entry point to use an efficiency also. Like we mentioned, they're all V3 strategies. If you've pursued them as part of FSP, you can use that information for your V3 STAR certification and not have to redocument and revalidate it with our certification team.
Yeah, that's the distinction I wanted just to reiterate is that they are V3 strategies. So as long as the STAR certification is a V3 certification, you can also include that in your FSP portfolio as well. And you don't have to redocument it if it has achieved certification. We'll just count that performance towards your FSP performance.
Definitely. And then a question I see in the chat here is which FSP scorecard would be applicable for a medical facility? So what's really nice is our scorecards align across STAR certification and FSP. So you can use the tools we have available for selecting the correct scorecard for even STAR certification. So we do have the applicability matrix, which Kenny, I'm going to call on you to grab that Help Center article. But we do have a Help Center article that has all of our products available and scorecards and the applicability matrix, which is a great resource created by our standard team that walks you through all different asset types and then lets you know who the occupants that would be impacted and what the scope would be for your project. And that would also apply to FSP. And this is also why we work one-on-one with people. We're happy to also talk through this. Thank you, Kenny, for sending that. So you can download that resource and review the different applications of our products. So medical office facilities or medical facilities can definitely pursue certification, yes. Let me see if we missed any in the Q&A. I think we might have covered them.
There's a question about the discounts. So the discount that we mentioned, it's at the bottom.
Okay.
The question is about the discounts. So the discount that we mentioned is 20% off recertification. Also, we do have discounts that are applicable to portfolios that have 100+ assets. Very good.
Very good point. Okay, we did miss a couple. So there's a question here about how many site-specific photos and annotated plans or documentation are required, or is documentation mainly corporate in nature? Just really the documentation process, it sounds like here. So because, as we mentioned, there are V3 strategies, it follows the same structure. So if you're pursuing this certified benchmarking approach, you want that validation, you want to be able to submit to a reporting body, specifically GRES, if that's what you're doing, you would need to document exactly the same way you would do STAR certification. So there's requirements, there's compliance documentation. We really outline exactly how to meet each strategy requirement. And I'll bring back up the platform for anybody that's not familiar with our strategies. When you're on the digital platform, these are all 6. This is theoretically showing if you're pursuing all 6 targeted outcomes. So within support high quality environment, if you select yes, and if you're pursuing it using option 1 here, you'll see the requirements pop up here on the right. So it's organized by requirements first, and then compliance documentation. So this really leads you and guides you to provide the specific documentation we need to confirm compliance with this requirement. Let's
And
see.
the second question on this is, what does the annual certification process entail? Is kind of what Whitney was saying. It's the documentation. You go through the platform, you document what applies to your asset and what applies to your portfolio. And you submit it. And then next year, you can restart the certification at any time. So it's a calendar year. You can certify at any time within the year and recertify at any time the following year. One thing to mention here is that the recertification process is meant to be efficient because it's an annual certification. So we are implementing recertification efficiencies on the platform. So for some of the strategies that don't necessarily need to be redocumented every year, if nothing has changed in your asset, you can we can still carry the documentation from the year before, and if something changed, you will just need to update your documentation. So it becomes more efficient as you recertify for some of the strategies. Some of them will need redocumentation. So, for example, anything that has to do with a performance metric or something, that will still need to be redocumented every year. But it becomes easier, and the goal is that we want you to like do either to keep adding to that portfolio or adding targeted outcomes to the specific assets that you've selected, or enhancing and improving on the existing performance. So we try to make it as efficient as possible.
Definitely, great point. And then I think we answered this question, but the fees, you are correct, Nicole, with your question. $1,000 per building and $1,500 per site. It is a single fee product, so there is no separate registration and certification fee. It's a single fee per asset within your portfolio. And something that we mentioned, but I don't think we honed in on here. I just want to be clear, with each report that you get, it is per entity, like per portfolio. So if you're pursuing multiple portfolios with, a few assets in each one, you would get a report per entity. So per portfolio, you would get a report. And even if it's mixed asset types within the portfolio, we would capture all of that data. So it doesn't need to be one asset type in each portfolio. It can be a mix of different asset types. Just want to make sure we're clear there.
Yep.
A question I see here, why should a client pursue FSP versus another at-scale program? Mentioning that FSP is a little bit more of an approachable, cheaper option. I think that depends on the goals that somebody is looking to achieve. FSP, as we mentioned, provides a lot of value in terms of actionable insights. There's a lot of data you get as a result. There's obviously that reporting deliverable, but really the actionable steps and incremental change that you can make year over year and see that change actually visually shown in these reports to give to your investors, to give to stakeholders, does provide a lot of value. So I think it does go back to better understanding what the goals.
Yeah, I would also add here is that FSP is really the only product that has that associates the strategies with health impact and economic impact. And as everything that we do here is at Fitwel, everything is backed by research. And so every single strategy that is associated to economic impact has a body of research behind it that makes that connection. We also provide the rationales basically on like what does it mean that you or this strategy has an impact on ROI or productivity or, occupant or tenant satisfaction. So there is evidence behind that that we also provide as part of this approach. So when earlier I mentioned this is a focused approach, this is what we mean. This is an approach that's really looking at how a portfolio is implementing health, health promoting strategies, but also how these health promoting strategies have an impact on the value of the asset itself. So when we're talking about using it as a tool and a decision making tool, this is where all of this comes in. And so it gives you a lot of insight into the assets in a very focused way. And based on your
Definitely.
goals with the targeted outcomes, like we said, it is a choose your own adventure. So you decide which of these targeted outcomes are important to you. They are thematically aligned with other reporting mechanisms. So it's a continuation of what you're already doing. So it continues to build on your goals and lets you decide what you want to do and what's important to you.
Definitely. And I think that hopefully answers this last question we received around, if somebody previously pursued 10 plus star certifications or assets using star certification, would it make sense to pursue FSP instead moving forward under V3? And it depends on your goals. What are you looking to achieve? What are you reporting on? What outcomes do you want? Which is a conversation we are more than happy to have with you to make sure we can best understand what you're looking to get and achieve to help you determine the right pathway.
Yeah.
So to kind of recap there in terms of next steps and how to get started, we have the form on our website. So you can visit our website here and under solutions, Fitwel Scale Certification FSP, we do have this form here for outreach, or if you're already in contact with us, reach out to one of us on our team. You'll probably hear back from me or Nadine to help you with FSP. And we're happy to work with anybody interested. And then you can also go to, I've been mentioning the Fitwel Certification Starter Kit under Resources, Resource Library. We have 2 starter kits available, and this one is the FSP Fitwel Scale Certification. And it has the mock report, as I mentioned. It has that star versus scale 1-pager. It has the primer for FSP, and it also has that strategy list that we've been referencing a lot. So to kind of close this out with only a few minutes left, if you're planning budgets for this year or next year, now really is a crucial time to add FSP if you're interested and start having those conversations during budget season. So it's cost effective, it's aligned with reporting frameworks, and provides clear, validated data.
And it's more than just a certification. It's a strategic tool as we've talked a lot about this aspect of it. And it's my favorite part about it. It helps you solve problems across your portfolio, improve your GRESB scores, and build long-term value within your portfolios.
Perfect. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We're so glad you joined to learn more about FSP. If you're interested in learning more, again, fill out that form, reach out to us, send us any questions via our email addresses. We're happy to chat with you. We'll be sending a follow-up email that will have a link to where to find this webinar, and also any questions that we can answer and didn't get to on this webinar, and also just any general questions that we want to make sure are included there. We'll make sure you have. But otherwise, everybody have a great rest of your Wednesday. And thank you again for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.